Hey everyone, I'm Kelly White, and this is the very first podcast for What Happened to My Body Houston. Today, we're going to talk about real life struggles with people going through chronic pain and health struggles, unknown, misdiagnosis, being dismissed, all the above. When you've lived this life for over 15 and 20 years, you're used to being dismissed, or it's all in your head, or here's a medication. I have been fortunate enough to be a hairstylist for about 20 years now, and a lot of my clients have had numerous issues, and over the years, we've discussed them. Not only did my own experience lead me to this podcast, but the experience of others opening up to me regarding their health struggles really made me feel like I could provide a space for people to feel more confident in telling their story. So this is going to be our first episode, and the first episode is going to be my story. We'll start at the very beginning. At the very beginning, it probably started about 19, 20 years old. I was having excruciating pain in my lower back between my hips. At the time, I worked at a high-end salon and spa, and there was a lot of standing, walking up and down the stairs, and I'm not really quite sure what the ventilation was like with all of the chemicals in the air. Other than that, today, I do wonder if that could have been an environmental trigger because I do notice that my body becomes more inflamed the more that I work, whether it's more standing or more chemicals that I'm using. After the first initial experience of pain, I don't know how to explain the feeling that was going through my head because I just thought it was temporary. But it wasn't temporary. It continued for a very long time, and it still continues to this day, but I've learned how to manage it. So I'm going to try not to hop around here. There's just so much back and forth. So what we're going to do is we'll tell you the story of the initial doctor's appointments, and then we'll go through the research and what I know now and how I'm here now. It's very rare that I go back to that pain that I experienced that very first time. Let's go ahead and continue with the initial medical journey. Eventually, I ended up getting an MRI, and I had 2 herniated discs. I saw several doctors, even a podiatrist, thinking maybe my ankles rolling in was causing my excruciating back pain. From a podiatrist point of view, my feet were my foundation. So that led me to believe because my ankles rolled in, I was experiencing this excruciating hip pain. At that point, we're doing the podiatrist. The pain management specialist is wanting me to do 3 rounds of steroid injection. At this point, I'm desperate. I do the steroid injections, 3 steroid injections. During this whole time, I am not really taking any of this very seriously. I was young. I was out having fun. I wasn't really watching what I was eating. I was drinking, and who knows what else. Anyways, so there was one night I had a really big scare. I was probably about 21 at this point, and I was in so much pain one night after we had come home from binge drinking all night. And probably about 3 or 4 in the morning, my roommate's asleep, and I just couldn't move. I was stuck in my bed, and I had to go to the bathroom. And at this point, I just cried because I didn't know what to do. I couldn't move. I literally could not even crawl out of bed to get to the bathroom. I was very thankful that night. I ended up falling asleep, but that wasn't the only episode that I ever had. That was one of the most memorable episodes that I've ever had. Moving on, we also had a situation probably about not long after I met my husband, and he was familiar with the back pain. He was very patient with the back pain. When the pain came, it was very hard to let anybody help me because I was just so scared that if they made a wrong move, it would hurt even worse. So me being in control of the situation, it was just better if I was in control of the situation. From this point, my ribs started having some weird pains. It would be kind of when I was breathing. I didn't really know how to explain it, but it was a pain that I had never had before. So at this point, we brushed it off. I just didn't know what to do at this point. I had been in so many different ways of pain in my back that did not want to deal with any other pain. So my mother-in-law noticed that this was kind of affecting my quality of life. One day she just showed up at my house when she knew I wasn't feeling well and took me to the emergency room, and that is where I got a CAT scan. When I got my CAT scan results, it showed inflammation in my SI joints and also showed me that I was positive for the HLA-B27 gene. But nobody explained to me what that was. It was just typed in my records on my reports, put into a folder in a little DVD disc that they give you to go to a doctor. From there, I started having issues with my eyes. I had reoccurring iritis. Once you have it multiple times, your doctor is concerned about a rheumatic disease. And I was really fortunate. I had an amazing eye doctor. She immediately called it, and I can't recall if I started seeing a rheumatologist at that point. You know what? I did. Yes, I did. She referred me to a rheumatologist, and I went to see the rheumatologist, and she took x-rays of my hands. I can't remember what else she took an x-ray with. I can't remember how or what else she did. I just remember I had never experienced a worse doctor in my life. I try to give everybody a benefit of the doubt, but I waited in the office for an hour and a half when 2 rounds of patients had already come through. Anyways, that is besides the fact. Yes, my eye doctor had recommended me to a rheumatologist, but I had such a bad experience with a rheumatologist that I decided at this point that I was not going back. I was done. I was just hoping and praying maybe this iritis would just, go away. Anyways, while you're going through this iritis process, you are required to take steroid drops. And while you're taking the steroid drops, you have to keep your eyes dilated, that specific eye dilated. I'm really fortunate. I only had iritis in my left eye. So back to when my doctor kind of mentioned rheumatic disease, rheumatoid arthritis, my heart sank. I just thought, there's just no way. I'm too young for this. There's no way. I'm healthy besides my back, that old cheerleading injury. I was just going to be fine. We're going to move on from after my costochondritis and my iritis and my inflammation in my SI joints and the herniated disc. We are fast forwarding to baby number 3. This is where I hit rock bottom. Absolutely hit rock bottom. After my 3rd baby, I had an emergency C-section and everything spiraled. My body wouldn't heal. I was in pain every single night. I lived in a bathtub. Trying to get relief. Sometimes I would cry and just sorry. Sometimes I would just feel so numb. I didn't know what to do anymore. I would just pray if I could just get out of this pain. I don't know how I'm going to raise 3 babies in this pain. That's just what would keep going through my mind. Anyways, while I'm going through this process, I kept a lot of this to myself. I wrote a lot of notes in my phone. I just documented every ache and pain I could think of, because after this C-section, I don't know what happened in my body, but it just shut down. It was inflammation on steroids. I would wake up and my whole back would just be stuck. I wouldn't be able to get out of position. And it wasn't even the pain that I felt when it was the original back pain. This was all the pain in one. It was the costochondritis. It was the SI joint. It was my ribs through my back where my epidural was. I don't even know how to explain it. Anywhere that could hurt could hurt. One thing about this disease is you freeze. your body freezes at night. And it's absolutely terrifying to move. I don't know how to explain it. People describe it as you are basically mummified. You're frozen. From this point on, I would literally just have to slowly break myself apart from this like pretzel and get myself in the bathtub or get myself in the shower or both. I literally did not sleep for months. It was such a dark time in my life, especially because at this point I still did not know what was wrong with me. Looking back, there are so many signs, and I'm smiling because the day that I got the diagnosis, I just couldn't get the smile off my face. I was so thrilled. I just knew where to start. I had a starting point. I could start researching what was actually wrong with me versus my symptoms. I finally saw a doctor. She referred me over to my rheumatologist. And as soon as I saw my rheumatologist, he diagnosed me with all of my paperwork and all of my records with Ankylosing Spondylitis. It has been a journey, to say the least, but I'm very thankful that I was able to get a diagnosis, because at that point we can start to figure out where to go from here. If that is another reason we are telling our story right now, is because my journey didn't end there. My journey actually started there. Right when I got diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, I was put on Humira, which is a biologic, and there are very many health concerns and symptoms that can come with that particular injection. I think I was doing it every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, they would mail me a shot. So my doctor puts me on Humira. We start taking these shots. I immediately feel relief. It was like I could sleep again. I could breathe again. I could think again. I could actually function and be a mom and be a wife and be present in all aspects of my life. I could be there. So once I start this Humira, my life is going well. Whenever we're starting to feel good, COVID happens. Well, when you're on a biologic, your immune system is more suppressed. So I was a little bit more nervous than your typical everyday person, because I was on these meds that compromised my immune system. At the beginning, I was very scared during COVID, and also just wasn't aware of anything, just what I was being told. Through this process of COVID, I did learn a lot, as I'm sure many of you did. What I'm trying to get to is, at first, I was very afraid because of the medication I was on. And I can totally relate and understand to others who were going through that period and may have been immunocompromised with meds, or just immunocompromised in general with a low immune system. I was on Humira for probably about 9 months, I want to say. Probably at about 9 months, we had some serious issues. All of a sudden, my body hurt again, and it was bad. Almost like we had a reverse situation and I couldn't get out of it. So when that happened, I decided that I was going to take the next step and change my diet and get really strict about it. And I wasn't going to be drinking. And I was so scared to eat anything. I was terrified, absolutely terrified that anything I was going to eat was just going to inflame me or make me hurt, or I just didn't know what was triggering me. I didn't know if it was my medicine that was counteracting my issues. I wasn't really sure what happened. But what happened was I ended up getting off Humira. Once I got off Humira, I had to see my doctor and talk to him about getting off and what his thoughts were. When I went to visit my doctor, he told me that my body's just not taking the Humira well anymore, and we may need to move over to another biologic. He wanted to put me on Cosentex. Well, that's just another biologic. All I can think of is same symptoms could occur, same process here. At this point, I told him that I wanted to try this on my own, and I wanted to change my diet, use exercise and yoga, and just different forms of stretching to see if I could heal myself. Lo and behold, after 6 months, the Humira gets out of your body. At that 6 month point, I was so strict with my diet. I learned how to sit better for my posture. I learned organic does make a difference. I read labels. Don't drink nearly as I used to, nor do I want to. I don't really live that lifestyle anymore. A margarita is good every once in a while, but the inflammation is just not worth it. I have been very strict with my children and the way that they eat and what they drink and the sports that they play, because this is a genetic or can be a genetic disease. There are many families that I followed where multiple people in the family have AS, and other diseases that are related to AS are Crohn's disease, psoriatic arthritis, and colitis. There are probably a few others. If you look up the gene HLA-B27, it'll give you a correlation of what diseases go with that particular gene. One more fun fact about this gene is it rejects foreign objects in the body. This is a little TMI, but after my third baby, I had plans to get breast implants, and I decided that I have to do a little bit of research now that I've been diagnosed with this inflammation situation. I'm really glad I did, because when I dove in, I realized the gene that I carry would most likely reject a breast implant. So therefore, we are just going all natural over here, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. 3 babies later, happy, healthy. Number one thing I want everyone to get out of this podcast is don't give up on yourself. Always advocate for yourself. Don't give up. Don't give up. There were many times where I did want to, but I'm very fortunate that I have a really awesome family, and they've always been here for me. I just know that there's always more cures and more research to do. Don't be afraid to do your own research. Don't be afraid to get a second, a third, fourth opinion. Get more opinions. Get more than just one opinion. You never know if you're misdiagnosed. You never know. You never know. And that's why I'm here today. I cannot wait to show you guys stories and let them tell you their stories. And if you can relate in any way, you're not alone. This is a place to make you feel like your darkest moments, there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel at some point. All right. That was my story. And I feel like I could go deeper on a few parts, but I kind of just really wanted to get my story out there and get this thing started. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.